All right, good morning, everybody.
They have these units in here.
All right, get this meeting started. This is the regular monthly open meeting of the Third Laguna Hills Mutual Board of Directors, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. Today is Tuesday, December 20th, 2022, and it's now 9:30 a.m. We are in the boardroom as well as available for viewing on TV6, Granicus, and Zoom. I'd like to call the meeting to order today. I see that we have a quorum present. We'll start today's meeting with our Pledge of Allegiance, led by Director Kush Bada. Kush.
Please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated. Thank you.
Thank you, Kush.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's now time to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Can I get a motion to approve today's agenda? Donna moves. Kush seconds. Does anybody have any suggested changes to the meeting? Chris, looks like you do.
Item 2D, I'm sorry. Item 2D, we need to remove it from 28-day notice.
So that's 12D?
12D.
12D.
Yes,
Okay.
it needs to be amended to remove the 28-day notice.
Okay.
We're entitled to vote on it today.
Okay, so that's a resolution that doesn't need 28-day notice, okay? Thank you. Any issues with that change? Any other changes? All right, hearing none. Speak now, or we're going to approve by consent. No hands raised, okay. Today's meeting with that change is approved by consent, thank you. We're now looking to approve meeting minutes for 3 different meetings. Why don't we address each of them separately? Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for last month's open board meeting held on November 15th? Donna moves. Jim seconds, thank you. Any suggested changes to those meeting minutes? Okay, seeing none, consider those minutes approved by consent. Can I next get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the agenda prep meeting for the third board that was held on December 2nd? Chris moves, Jim seconds, thank you both. Any suggested changes to those meeting minutes for the agenda prep meeting? Seeing none, consider that approved by consent. Those approved by consent. And finally, can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the special board meeting where this board selected their VMS board representative and elected its first vice president? That was also held on December 2nd. Chris moves. Jim seconds. You need to be a little faster, Jules. All right. Any suggested changes? Okay, none. All right. We'll consider those approved by consent as well. Okay. We're now moving to agenda item 5, report of the chair. I only have a couple items today. First, just a quick reminder that there are still 2 open board director positions for the Third Mutual. One is a 1-year term and one is for a 3-year term. There will be a special open third board meeting on Friday, January 6th. At 10:30 a.m. Here in the boardroom, where the board will talk with any qualified candidates who have submitted their applications and determine if any of those candidates should be selected to the board. As of this morning, there's only 1 qualified candidate so far, so if you'd like to be considered, please work with corporate secretaries and complete your candidate applications by the end of this month. And secondly, just wanted to wish all of our members and residents, as well as staff and my fellow board members, the merriest of holidays, and hope that you all have a healthy and happy 2023. So that completes my remarks for today. And we'll move on to agenda item 6, where we'll have an update from the VMS board. VMS board president Rosemarie DeLorenzo is providing today's update. Good morning, Rosemarie.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the third board. Usually I say hardworking members, so I'll add that again. I thank you for appointing me for a 3-year term. I I was also going to try to introduce at the mic Mary Sato, who will be coming here, and she will be at the meeting this afternoon, the part of the meeting this afternoon, because with that selection that you made, we could already see that we have an energetic, bright, and future chair of the VMS board. So thank you very much. We have here, and all of you have copies, and the year in review. When we say a year in review, it's a little bit difficult because the VMS board, I can't say we don't do anything because we do a lot, but we don't do these things. These are things that are done by VMS. But when we have them on our list, they're things that we probably were more involved in, might have instigated a little bit more, probably ran around after Siobhan saying, when, type of thing. So that's why we have them on the list. So one of the biggest things we did was reorganizing, removing the COO's position and adding the 2 positions of Director of Operation and Services Manager. And we also promoted from within our Financial Services Department and reorganized in there. They did that. And to try to change their profile, which used to be in the past, let me say no department, to a positive working experience, a more positive working experience. So that was really very important. We had our strategic plan update meeting, and we are going to be having one in January, but Siobhan will talk about that. We really finally had someone in position who analyzed the fleet and did fleet right sizing, because a lot of the things that we have to do as we move forward is figure out ways to save money so that we could afford all of the things that are going up, labor, et cetera. We had our focus group to expand communications, and Eileen is going to be doing the first, Eileen, who is in charge of communications, will be doing the first presentation at the VMS board meeting and the first Wednesday of January. So that is a good time when we're going to ask her, what are the new things we're doing in communications as a result of the focus group? She's already touched on them, but she's had more time so she can get us that information. We have the new part-time recreation positions, and if any of those of you who go to the gym or the clubhouses, I know I see people at the Bridge Clubhouse or also at the gym, adding these part-time positions for residents has been wonderful because it gives them the opportunity to meet with residents. They're part of the show, so to speak, and it gives them money. And it's not quite the same as working at the gate. I would find it, if I had to pick a job, I would certainly take the clubhouse job. So they're still working on that because there's still some positions open. We asked all of the boards, and we got a great reception from Third, to reduce the number of governance meetings. And we also are hoping, I know that Mark, your president, is trying to work with United to get him to join the bandwagon to decrease the number of meetings, because the meetings not only take up your time, but they take up staff time, and you could all be doing something more profitable, better. We did work with staff to review the employee health insurance program, which saved us quite a bit of money. And but the best thing ever is that the employees are having no increase in their insurance payments. Actually, it's a little bit less. And that's incredible, because for those of us who pay for secondary insurance or prescription insurance, it has all of ours has gone up. I was asking Siobhan if we could all jump onto the employee program so we could save money, but they don't have a board insurance program. But that was a great thing for the employees. We had board member training. We are working on the ERP program. I'm not involved in that, but I know that Mark is, and a number of our board members working with Chuck. Catherine has been taken over or working on the CSIP, which Continuous Service Improvement Program, and they introduced a new component in that in the month of December, so we'll be very eager to hear how that is working. And we're working on KPI development. I think we're probably almost there. We had a contractor open house, and we are continuing to focus, and I hear great things about Jim Cook in this area, on manor alterations and damage restoration. So that's Those are two big areas of ours. For the year 2023, we have the Bright Idea program coming up, the telephone system upgrade, which we've talked about, continuation of the ERP program, continuation of the CSIP program, development of the new village website. We're going to have the central master irrigation control system, continued communication enhancement. We're going to have another contractor meeting because that was very good, and have a real estate professional meeting. We're going to have, again, the strategic plan update, succession planning, sensitivity and positivity training, and we're going to be analyzing our services for outsourcing opportunities. We talked about that. Are there any areas that we could outsource? In the hospitality business, we closed all of our laundries and we're using outside laundries. Unfortunately, we don't have laundry here because that would be a great fix. You could do that very quickly, and it's a great idea. Biggest thing that we really want to do on the VMS board is to listen. We have to listen to you, the board, our customer, and listen to the residents, and make sure that when we listen, we learn and we improve. That has to be our goal. That is my presentation. Thank you very much. I'll stay here in case anyone has a question.
Great, thank you, Rosemarie. Any of our board members have any questions for Rosemarie regarding the VMS update? All right.
Okay, now that I stay, they don't have questions. I want to wish you and all of our residents, members of Third, and all of the staff members a very happy holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now move on to agenda item 7, which is our open forum. At this time, members may address the Board of Directors regarding items within the jurisdiction of this Board of Directors and not on the agenda. The board reserves the right to limit the total amount of time allotted for the open forum to 30 minutes. Each member is asked to speak for no more than 3 minutes. A member may speak only once during the forum, and speakers may not give their time to other people. Members not in the boardroom, can also share their comments by joining this meeting via Zoom or by emailing your comments to meeting@vmsinc.org to have your message read during this open forum should time permit. So Michaela/Paul, are there any requests by members to speak or be heard today?
Yes, the first member we have is John Frankel.
Greetings, fellow board members. It's good to see you all. My energy is slowly coming back. I can't consider running for any vacancies, but I'm here to speak because if you have an opening on one of your committees for advisor, I think I might be able to spend some time assisting in that regard. Anyway, Merry Christmas to all.
Thank you, John. Great to see you.
Next speaker is Robert Stace.
Good morning, Board. Thank you for letting me speak. Robert Stace, 2381 Via Mariposa West. I have several issues. One is I have a excessive plumbing leak in the garage at 2381 Via Mariposa West. I've reported it several times to resident services, and it's never been fixed. It's seeping sewage. So I have pictures that I'll provide you that I'll leave at the front with Micaiah of my issue. Next one is there's a pipe in the very front by the stairs that's split open wide. When it rains, it spews water onto the sidewalk where the residents come down the stairs. It's dangerous. So it's been reported. I've sent pictures to resident services. It still is unresolved. The next issue is I have a resident in the building, a tenant, that doesn't comply with the rules. One example of compliance, they took a board and filled in between two cabinets in the garage. They just do whatever they want. It doesn't matter what the rules are. So that still hasn't been changed. I filed with compliance. The building captain, I'm the co-captain, she's filed twice. Another resident has filed twice, and I filed 3 times with compliance. It's going nowhere. They are rat packs. They have crap all over, junk, in the front of their unit and in the rear. Every place that you could stick something, they've done it. Their patio is completely packed. It's just an issue, and compliance has done nothing to clean it up. So I'd like to see if you can edge compliance to do something about it. I'll give you pictures of everything so you can review it for your own purposes. Another issue is the same resident brings guests into the parking area underneath the building and lets them park just anywhere. So I've called security, they've cited her, but she continuously does it. It just doesn't matter to her. The cars don't have a wreck, any public going through the gate. They don't have a sticker, they don't have an RF sticker. Those people, as I understand on the CCNRs, are to park on the street or park in the cul-de-sac. They're not allowed to park, if they're non-resident, they cannot park in a reserved area, period, even if it's her guest. So, but she just does it repeatedly, over and over again. The next issue is the same tenant conducts business in the rec room. I've told her not to do it. I have pictures of her in the rec room. I said, you can't do it, period. She also has her church group, which is not registered with Recreations Department, which they have to be. She refuses to do it. And they come in the rec room and hold their meetings. And frequently they just come in. They don't use we have a logbook that all the residents are supposed to sign so we can share it for everyone.
All right?
Nope.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Stace, appreciate you bringing your complaints. Thanks.
Next speaker is June Choi.
Good morning, everybody. My name is June Choi. I just moved in last year, and that I happened to rent it to my property December 1st, 2022, which is a few days ago. And the communication wasn't there that we fully understood what work is gonna be done, which is pipe restoration. They had to do it, and I wasn't really aware of that exactly what's going on. So I had a list on December 1st, and then my new tenants, supposed to come on 5th of December to just move in, but the work was done December 12th, which is not I was expected, and I got a letter. They said they're gonna be done by December 7th, and the work has completely done on 12th of December. So I'll just make story short that tenants has to go back their old address, and then they came in on Friday, which is 9th of December, and the agent of the new tenants, they're requesting damages, which is $730 some and cents, which is 8 days of worth the rental amount. So I agreed to them that I will pay for it. So I'm here to asking you if you can reimburse that money so that I can, offset their claim amount. I guess that's all for now, because I didn't know that I just got the letter yesterday that somebody will call me about discuss about the issue that I have. So I'm just came here. It's the first time, and I just came here for if you can help me out to resolve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Carol Moore.
Good morning. Actually, I'm here to give thanks. And at first, I want to start with staff. We have some fantastic staff, and you know it. Some have been here for years, some are newer. They are conscientious, they are loyal, they're hardworking, and we appreciate it very much. They're in various departments. They are from TV6 to property services to all kinds of areas, and it is such a joy to know that we have such conscientious people. I also want to thank the VMS board for their work because that is a challenge. I appreciate everything that they're doing. And that brings me to the third board. And I want to thank each of you. Thank you so much. You are such a joy to this community. You are volunteering your time and you are really role models because you're doing the job that needs to be done. You're doing it with professionalism. It's just such a joy to see this board and to see the kinds of things that you have accomplished and to have done it all very professionally. It's not easy when you're on a board. It isn't hard, but for some it is. It's listening to other people. You do that. You give thought, and what you've come up with, you have made great strides. I can't even begin to tell the kinds of things that you have accomplished, but I'm going to name one because there are too many. I couldn't name them all. For example, in the rental office, you reduced to 2 pages what should have been no more than 2 pages. Thank you for that. You've done so many other things, and believe me, it is appreciated. You're very professional. Thanks for your hard work.
Thank you.
And we have Woo Koom Lee.
Good morning. November 10, and I was watching TV in my bedroom. I heard a terrible shaking noise from above us. So I didn't know where the sounds come from. But I waited for a while and sounds was continue. So I went to my bathroom. My 2-bathroom sink was overflowed to the bottom of the floor, dirty and waters. So I called I think so. I tried to find out where you come from. So I went above the second floor. There's fine. I went to 3C. They are working, hiring outside the plumbing to, open their clogged sink. So I called the security dispatch, so they send the plumbers, so they make a drain our sink. Right after me and my husband clean and dry, most intruder people came, they inspected water, so there's no water. So they told me we don't need to use a fan to dry out. So next day, we left out of town 2 weeks. And I think they said that there's some reason they're gonna coming back something. Then we have a key is in the security department. So we left and they want another appointment. So after 2 weeks, we came back and we found out our bottom of our vanity, panel is removed and they didn't replace. Then 28th, the inspector came and third mutual is not going to replace. So we have to replace that one. So I'm totally disagree. This is not our fault and we work so hard. And also there's no moisture. Why they remove that vanity bottom? So please, replace us. It is a great, stress for us, Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that is all.
Okay. Yeah, good.
Get the name and could we have the name and the number for the last lady?
Name is on the bottom of the screen there.
Yes, it's Woo Kum Lee. And it Manners 34981C.
4981B.
1C.
1C. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks. Are there any responses from board members to any of the comments?
Not right.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'll kind of comment on them all, or I guess. So John, again, great to see you. I'll check with the committee folks and we'll be in touch as we need some advisors. Mr. Stace, we'll take your issues under advisement. I'll work with staff for the leaks regarding the compliance issues. I know compliance is working on it. It's unfortunately not always a quick process, but I'll see what I can do to speed them up a little bit on that. Mr. Choi, we'll take a look at your situation as well. I'll work with staff to get a better understanding of exactly what happened, but I'll be in touch. Thanks, Ms. Moore, for your comments. And Ms. Lee as well, we'll take a look at that. I'm sure staff is looking at that, and as appropriate, there'll be a hearing, and then things will go from there. So, but thank you all for taking the time to share your comments, and we will look into those. Appreciate it.
Just one comment?
Yes, Jim?
Yeah, Mrs. Lee, the reason he was taking your name and number and that is because he's the chairman of the Maintenance and Construction Committee. So he follows through on everything. So just so you know, it'll get taken care of, at least looking in to see what the problem is.
Thanks.
Would you see me afterwards, after the meeting, for just a few moments?
Okay, thanks. All right, we'll now move on to agenda item 9, which is the CEO report. Siobhan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Laws. Honorable President, members of the board, this morning, as the year comes to an end, I want to highlight solid waste handling services and share information recently received from the city with the goal to enhance CR&R performance in the village. This year, our General Services Department worked closely with the city to transition solid waste and recycling programs from waste management to CR&R. And I want to thank both of them for their tireless efforts. The efforts included implementing the new organics recycling program in response to Senate Bill 1383, implementing new, more efficient bulky item collection program, and coordinating replacement of tall bins with lower profile bins. Next slide, please. The 1-year anniversary of CR&R service provision is January 1st. And since the service contract is between the City of Laguna Woods and CR&R, VMS has expressed concern to the city manager regarding CR&R performance in Laguna Woods Village and asked what steps the city is taking to compel CR&R to improve its performance. Next slide. The city communicates with CR&R staff on a daily basis, frequently on matters related to solid waste handling services within Laguna Woods Village. There are also standing meetings with CR&R. There's a weekly meeting among city, CR&R, and VMS involving the city contract administrator, CR&R enterprise sustainability director, and the VMS general services director. There is also a bi-weekly meeting between city and CR&R involving the city manager, city contract administrator, and CR&R president and regional vice president, as well as the enterprise sustainability director. On the screen before you are missed collections by quarter in Third Mutual since the beginning of the contract term. Missed collections were the highest in Q1 with an average of 64.33 containers missed per month, or 3% of the total containers being serviced within Third Mutual. Misses decreased in Q2, but increased again significantly in Q3. The Q4 information is not yet complete since we're not through the end of the month. CR&R identifies driver consistency as the primary factor contributing to missed collections. Relief drivers providing service when regular drivers are ill or out on vacation aren't familiar with the village. The city is working with CR&R to identify solutions to compensate for the periodic need for relief drivers. One item mentioned is that in January, the city will begin conducting follow-behind field reviews of CR&R's routes as part of these efforts. The city is also able to assess liquidated damages for containers not collected from the same enclosure or curbside location on 2 consecutive scheduled collection days. Liquidated damages have been assessed for consecutive missed collections within the village in August, September, and October. The city is finalizing the process to reimburse the housing mutuals for consecutive missed collections for liquidated damages that have been collected. So those will be returned to the mutuals. On the screen before you are hold times for telephone requests since the beginning of the contract term. And you'll see the highest wait time was in September with 23 minutes. But for all but 2 of the first 11 months of the contract term, the average hold time was less than 9 minutes. And for a majority of the first 11 months of the contract term, the average hold time was less than 4.5 minutes. The city also shared the following specific incidents and follow-up on performance-related issues. On October 27th, CR&R experienced technical issue causing one of their main servers to fail. This caused CR&R to lose the ability to receive telephone and email communications. This issue was resolved on October 28th, so 1 day later. On October 31st, VMS notified CR&R that the ability to press 1 for Laguna Woods Village was not operating. When customers called CR&R, the telephone rang. Either general customer service picked up the call or the customer was prompted to leave a voicemail. This issue was resolved on November 7th, a week later. On November 29th, the city notified CR&R that its Laguna Woods Village specific email address was not operating. This issue was resolved on November 30th, a day later. On December 8th, city staff notified of a concern regarding a bulky item collection vehicle that was parked at Clubhouse 4. On December 13th, CR&R notified the city that the driver was reassigned and would no longer provide service within the village. And lastly, the contract allows the city to hold performance hearings on a biennial basis to ensure services are being provided with adequate quality, effectiveness, and economy. The first opportunity to hold a performance hearing is July 2023, 18 months into the contract term. So again, I just wanted to thank the city and our staff for working collectively to implement the new contract and assure our residents that the city is taking this very seriously and trying to enhance performance to the greatest extent possible. And that concludes my presentation this morning.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions from board members for Siobhan? All right, so you mentioned some hold times in that. That is hold times for members calling CR&R, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And you also mentioned that our first opportunity to hold a hearing is in July. Are we doing anything now to make sure that we're scheduling that, or is that something that we'll wait and do closer?
There is a 90-day lead time for scheduling that, so
Okay.
that decision obviously would need to be made by the city in advance of that.
Okay, so the city makes the decision with input from us? Is that how that?
That is my understanding, but
Okay.
the mayor is in our audience, so I don't want to speak.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
I have
Yes,
a question. This is the first time I'm hearing a report of our garbage hauling company. Is this a new thing that we are doing, or because it's been 5-6 years that I've been around on the board?
We get regular monthly reports from the city. We have been sharing those with the presidents of each of the boards. We did take the opportunity as we were nearing year end to reach out to the city manager to share our viewpoint here and learn what they are doing to continually improve the service. So I think it's just better communication, and that's why we're receiving
That's
this
awesome.
information.
Yeah, it's good to hear all this, but I haven't heard any kind of a complaint or accolades or anything about that garbage hauling company all these years, so that's why I'm wondering
Okay.
what's going on.
You haven't heard any complaints over the past year?
Not
trash?
really.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Maybe they're all complaining to me.
Oh, maybe so.
All right. Good. Thanks again, Siobhan, for that. That's a good presentation. We're now moving on to agenda item 10, the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are recommended for action by committees and will be enacted by the board by one motion. Today, we'll ratify the preliminary financials for the month of October 2022, and we're being asked to approve a request for the removal of a tree that was recommended by the Landscape Committee. Can I get a motion to approve today's consent calendar? Jim moves. Kush seconds. Thank you both. Anybody have any issues with approving the consent calendar? Okay, I'm looking, seeing none. We'll consider the consent calendar approved by consent. Hey. Yeah. And we're now up to agenda item 11, unfinished business. We have one item today. Agenda item 11A is for the board to entertain a motion to approve updates to the rules for board meetings. These updates were suggested by the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee as a result of noticing discrepancies between the current rules for board meetings and the information in our Director's Handbook. Last month, this board approved these changes and put them on 28-day member review and comments. So today we'll be seeing if we have any comments and then voting on whether or not to approve these changes. First, I'm going to ask Chris to read the resolution.
Rules for, rules for board meetings. Whereas each owner member of Laguna Woods Village has an ongoing interest and right under California law to participate in the governance of their community. And whereas the Board of Directors of the Third Laguna Hills Mutual has an equal interest and duty under law to ensure that the management of the community's affairs is carried out professionally and in adherence with the provisions of the Davis-Sterling Act. And whereas the Board of Directors wishes to promote order and regulate meeting time in an even and consistent fashion. Now therefore be it resolved, December 20th, 2022, that the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby approves the attached revised rules for board meetings, and resolve further that Resolution 03-20-80, adopted November 17, 2020, is hereby superseded and canceled, and resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Can I get a motion to approve the updated rules for board meetings before we discuss them?
So moved.
Chris moves. Donna seconds. Thank you. Is there any questions, discussion from members of the board? Okay. All right, Michaela, is there any comments or questions from any third board members? Okay. Now time to vote. We're going to vote electronically? Okay. All right, so I see some people, the voting option is coming up, some it's not. It's not for myself and Chris, I see. Isn't technology wonderful?
Thank you very much.
I need to scroll down. Okay. All right, 8 people here, 8 votes yes. So these updates are approved, and we'll now oversee the last version. I said that wrong, but okay. I'll move along anyway. Thank you. And now we're moving on to agenda item 12, which is new business. Good reminder to turn our phones off. Agenda item 12A is for the board to entertain a motion to approve revised architectural standard number 26, which is for skylight installations. These updates were recommended by the Architectural Controls and Standards Committee. Today we'll be voting on whether or not to submit these revised architectural standards forward for 28-day member review and comment. I'm not sure, is anybody from staff?
Bart is in the audience if you have
Okay,
any
I
questions.
see him there, way back there hiding. Good day, Bart.
Good morning. Mr. President, board members, so this is our continuation of an effort to update our standards to make sure they are up to date, that they're still relevant, that they apply to what we are doing. This particular one was the subject of a variance recently, and it brought to everyone's attention that this was not quite up to date. It did not take into account new technology for skylights, as well as new shapes for them. So with the proposed change to this standard, it will avoid considering any more variances, and it will be addressed in a more streamlined fashion to allow for faster response to our residents. Just to highlight some of the changes that were incorporated, it includes one, the allowance for skylights to be slightly larger than the space in between the rafters, provided the proper engineering is prepared and submitted to the city for review, as well as the materials where clear glass would be an acceptable type of surfacing for the skylights, and to make sure that it is in compliance with the current building code. Your attachment number 3, shows the red lines in more detail, and I am available to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thanks, Bart. Anybody have any questions of Bart? Or any other comments about it? Okay. Okay, Chris, I guess I'll have you read the resolution now. Thank you, Bart.
Okay. Revised Architectural Standard 26, Skylight Installations. Whereas the Architectural Control and Standards Committee recognizes the need to amend alteration standards and create new alteration standards as necessary, and whereas the Architectural Controls and Standards Committee recognizes the need to revise Architectural Standards Section 26, Skylight Installations. Now therefore be it resolved, January 17, 2023, that the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby introduces the attached Architectural Standard 26, Skylight Installations, and resolve further that Resolution 03-1892, adopted May 15, 2018, is hereby superseded in its entirety and no longer in effect, and resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution as written.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. All right, can I get a motion to approve these revised standards?
So moved.
Jim moves. Second, Kush, thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion from members of the board? We have that all, and we've read them, so none. Okay. Michaela, any questions, comments from anyone, members? All right. So it's now time to vote. Again, we're voting to submit these standards forward for 28-day member review and comment. Missing somebody. Kush, have you voted?
Yeah, oh, sorry. My apologies.
All right, there's 8 of us, all 8 voted yes to proceed with putting this on 28-day review. Thank you, board. Agenda item 12 B is for the board to entertain a motion to approve updates to the third's nuisance policy. These updates were suggested and recommended by the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee in an effort to clarify what qualifies as a nuisance. Specifically, a single instance of an action is not enough to qualify as a nuisance, but repeated instances of certain actions raised to the level of being a nuisance. Today, we will be voting on whether or not to submit these revised or these updates forward for 28-day member review and comment. Yeah. So, Chris, can you read the resolution, please?
Nuisance policy, whereas the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee has recognized the need to amend the nuisance policy to clarify guidelines for nuisance complaints received by the board. Now therefore be it resolved, January 17th, 2023, that the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby adopts the nuisance policy as attached to the official minutes of this meeting, and resolve further that Resolution 03-20-28, adopted April 21, 2020, is hereby superseded and canceled, and resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution.
All right. Thanks again. Can I get a motion to approve these updated policy before we discuss it?
So moved.
Chris moves. Any seconds? Jim seconds, thanks. Any discussion, comments, questions from board members? In a kind of a fairly minor change for those of you looking at it. Okay. Kayla, any member comments? All right. So again, it's time to vote. Again, we're voting on whether or not to submit these updated policy forward for 28-day member review and comment. All right, and voting is completed, 8 of us, and again, all 8 voted yes. So again, this is submitted forward for consideration from our members. Agenda item 12C is to approve updated committee assignments. In this case, in case you're not aware, during the government elections last month, the third board's first vice president, Annie McCary, was elected to the Laguna Woods City Council. So as a result, she resigned from the third board, and other board members have been identified to fill the committee assignment positions that she had filled earlier. Can I get a motion to proceed with these committee updates? Jim moves, Donna seconds. Change the name here or there. Any questions from board members regarding these committee assignments? Okay, everybody okay with them as they are? All right. I'm assuming there's no comments from members, okay? So it's time for us to vote on these committee updates as well. And they will be effective, assuming there's a yes vote, they'll be effective immediately. Okay, Ralph, yours isn't taken?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll push it again.
Okay. There you go. All right. Okay. So again unanimous. All 8 of us voted to approve these committee updates. Thank you. And the last of our new business today is agenda item 12D. This is for the board to entertain a motion to approve a supplemental appropriation for water landscaping in the amount of $151,000. This appropriation was recommended by the Landscape Committee and was endorsed by the Finance Committee. What is happening here is that the board is being asked to vote on whether or not to reallocate the money saved by reducing irrigation watering over the past 6 months or so from the irrigation budget and allocate it to the landscaping's turf reduction budget so that the board can proceed with projects that will replace existing turf areas with plantings, water-wise plantings and mulch that will both reduce our irrigation in the future as well as some of our shrub maintenance in the future. So again, this is one of those instances where this board is looking to spend a little money now in this case, money that we saved by reducing our irrigation water usage, so that we'll save even more money in the future for our members. Chris, would you read the resolution for us, please?
Yes. Supplemental funding for turf reduction projects. Whereas June 21st, 2022, the Third Board of Directors recognized that the state of California is experiencing record drought conditions requiring parts of Southern California to reduce exterior irrigation water use, and directed staff to reduce irrigation by 15%. And whereas the Third Landscaping Committee determined that funding for turf reduction projects should be appropriated from savings to the water expense account based on savings from these reductions and funded from the Landscape Replacement Reserve Fund. And whereas December 1, 2022, the Third Mutual Landscape Committee endorsed the recommendation. Now therefore be it resolved on January 17, 2023, that a supplemental appropriation of $151,000 have been approved to be used for turf reduction projects throughout Third Mutual, and resolve further, this resolution shall become in full force and effect on January 17, 2023, and resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution as written.
Okay, thank you. And that's the last one for you. Can I get a motion to approve this appropriation request before we discuss it? Jim, thank you. And Kush, seconds. Thank you both. Any questions, comments from board members? Yeah. Yeah, all right, none. Kayla, any question, comments from anybody? Okay, all right. One last time. It's now time to vote on whether or not to move this money. And just kind of a silly budget thing that we need to do to move it to make our budgets align. There it is. Okay. All right. Okay. So 8 of us, motion passes. Thank you, board. It's now time to move on to agenda item 13, where members
Mark?
of this. Yes.
I would like to change my vote on the adoption of the new board rules. I think I hit the button by mistake. I would like to vote no. Can we make the?
I can make
We
the
can make that change.
correction.
Thank you
Yes.
very
Yes.
much.
Yes. Thanks, Jules. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks for letting me know. All right, now move on to agenda item 13, where members of this board will share our monthly committee updates, starting with the report of the Finance Committee. Donna.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And as chair of the Finance Committee, I do want to remind our members and notify those new ones, the Finance Committee is a committee of the whole. Every board member sits on the Finance Committee, and that's because of our fiduciary responsibility to the community. It's important that every board member be aware of expenses, expenditures, income, et cetera. And so because of that, it is a committee of the whole. Typically, up until now, we had met every month. And after discussion with the board and with our finance department, it was determined that we would be able to meet every other month and still be able to accomplish things and stay on top of all the finances. There would always be possibility of a special meeting if necessary, but just want everybody to know, so that our very first meeting of 2023, as is noted in the agenda, will be in February rather than in January, and then every other month throughout the year from then on. So with that, let's move on to the numbers and the Finance Committee's report. You can see that through the reporting period, we first look at total revenue, total expenses, just all added up together. And you can see that our total revenue was a little over $36 million, and our total expenses just a little over $32 million. leaving a net revenue of almost $4 million. Let's look, though, and see where that income and expenses were. So let's move on to slide number 2, where you can see that this is our operating budget. This is the budget we look at very closely and we monitor throughout the year. These are the expenses and revenue we anticipated before the year started, and this is where they are. So our assessment revenue, almost $24 million, non-assessment, $1.6 million, for total revenue of almost $25.5 million, against expenses that were just under that by approximately $1 million, leaving an operating surplus at this point of the year, actually as of October 31st. It's important that we say that because the year is ending very, very soon in a matter of days. And there are other statements that will be brought up to date before that year closes out. So let's move on. And now we're looking at income and expenses compared to our budget. You know, it's always we set aside money, how did that work? And we can see that our assessment revenue was almost exactly what was set aside in the budget and what was anticipated, and our non-assessment revenue slightly better for a total revenue of $38,000, greater than we had anticipated. And our total expenses at $3.1 million, at $32.3 million, sorry, I shifted columns too quickly, against a budget that was slightly higher. So we do, again, have a net surplus at this moment, again, the moment being October 31st, not today, December. And so, again, we're sitting at the end of October with net revenue against expenses of $3.2 million. As we move on, this is my favorite chart when it's mostly green. Those are not Christmas colors. Those are green, meaning we were better than budget, versus red when we were not. And you could see that for the most part, we were better than budget in several areas. Outside services, that surplus had to do with delays actually in invoice processing for things like moisture intrusion, copper pipe remediation, and programs related to asphalt. It is anticipated that by the end of the year, when all things are compared and all bills in and paid, that moisture intrusion will actually end the year about $168,000 over budget, and that had to do with a little more work than was anticipated. Moisture intrusion is something that's extremely difficult to predict. It happens when it happens, and usually after a heavy rain. So that's something that we're always very, very close, but won't be exact. Pipe remediation is expected to end the year $400,000 approximately better than budget, because not for good reason, it's because the program started late. And we've had issues throughout the year with projects getting started, often because of help and because of employees being not in place. Through October, our Cool Roof program, that's the PVC Cool Roof program, completed 20 of the 32 roofs that were anticipated, and they are expected to be complete and right on budget by the end of the year. As we move down, employee compensation, it's better than budget. Unfortunately, the reason it's better than budget is because we do not have a full complement of employees. We are still looking, and we've been mentioning that throughout the year as an ongoing issue. Insurance, $700,000 better than budget. That was something we were very pleased to see. The year before, you may all recall, we were hit with a very large jump in our insurance bill, having to do with the community being reevaluated in terms of its property values and the buildings that are part of Third Mutual. And that reevaluation had us go from $700 million of a valuation to $1.6 billion, right at the same time that insurance companies had gotten hit by hurricanes and all kinds of fires. And of course, in California, we're well aware of those fires. And so it was a very, very big hit to our budget the previous year. So in anticipation of that, we slightly overestimated just to make sure we would have sufficient funds to cover that expense. And it turned out that there wasn't the increase we expected at all. So we were very pleased to see that $700,000 better than budget. Legal fees were $258,000 better than budget. Again, in that case, great effort on the part of the board and everybody else to use our legal services wisely and contact them when we needed to, kind of make sure we were efficient in that usage, and we're pleased to see that that is working. Utilities is something that really is important to note, because that's the only area that's in red. And the part of it that created that red line, utilities are both water and electric, and the part of it that's responsible for that line being red and being not as good as budgeted is because SoCal Edison, the previous year, went through some system changes and didn't notify us of approximately $161,000 of bills. They were presented to us in 2022, and that's when we had to pay them. So that was something that was totally beyond our control, but that is now. We understand they've got their systems up and running, and we should be fine. Moving on to the next slide. These are my favorite because it's so easy to see what they're demonstrating. And this is our non-assessment revenue. Where does our money come from when we talk about non-assessment revenue? You can see the biggest piece of that pie is chargeable services, responsible for almost a third of our non-assessment revenue income. Permit fees and lease processing fees are the second two largest, but still not quite equaling the chargeable services. Laundry revenue actually is fairly healthy and significant. And as we move around that pie going in a clockwise direction, you can see each space is getting slightly smaller, but covering all of the areas in which we receive revenue. And we always like to present that to you. As we go on to the next slide, these are expenses. And there is no question that employee compensation and related expenses being things like benefits, et cetera, that's a full third of our total expenses. Coming in second, and a very, very significant piece of our pie at over 20%, are our fees for insurance. Outside services is next, and that's a number that fluctuates quite a bit. It went up a bit this year because when we do not have sufficient staff, we have to use outside services to make sure that the work is completed. And we do not roll over major projects, and we get them done. And so outside services, utilities are certainly significant, and then in very, very small portion of the allocation to the mutuals, materials and supplies, and repairs and maintenance. So let's move on as we come near the end of the report. And here we started out looking at our operating budget, our operating expenses, what we actually work with day to day. We also have some non-operating funds, replacement funds, and obviously there are replacement things needed on a regular basis all the time. Some can be anticipated and some not. But you can see that that is ending the year slightly better than it began. Replacement fund at 19 million, a little over, and our current balance a little over $21 million. The Garden Villa Fund is very, very small, but very significant and important, and the individuals in the Garden Villa do actually pay a small assessment each month to cover costs that are specifically related to those buildings, such as the recreation room, et cetera. The Disaster Fund, as you can see, that is compared to the beginning of the year is increased when we were hit with that very large insurance bill. Some of that was taken from the disaster fund and it is permitted. It certainly was a disaster to us when we saw that bill. And so we are slowly putting that money back, and that is going to stay quite healthy. Unappropriated expenditures is another way of saying our contingency fund. Those things that we can't anticipate, but we always have to have money set aside for the just in case. And so you can see that if we add up all of those funds, every one of them is doing a little better now than it was at the beginning of the year. And so we're always pleased to report that. And if we move on, this is just a bar chart showing those funds that I just reported to you from year to year over a 5-year period. And you can see that the replacement funds has significantly grown from 2018 to 2022, which we are very glad to see because our facilities are aging and we have to make sure that we can take care of any expenses related to needing replacement of things. The disaster fund, a little smaller. If you notice, it's coming back, but a little smaller than those first 2 years of 2018 and 19. And part of that has to do with the fact that we are used to have our earthquake insurance come out of the disaster fund. And now it is not coming out of that fund. It's paid for from the same fund that takes care of our insurance. And so that fund is coming back, but doesn't need to be the amount that it was because it's not covering the same things. And then the very thin, if you're very astute and looking, you see a tiny, tiny kind of a beige-ish line across the top, and that's the Gardenville Rec Room Fund, a very, very small portion of our contingency of our non-operating expenses, but a very important one. And that concludes that financial piece. As we move on, this is just a resale history. We are actually about 40 units less than the previous year. There were fewer resales. We look, and it's always important, when we look at that average resale price, you can see that the numbers have gone up every single year. Some of that, and I always want to alert everybody, these days there are a few at the high end, a few units that sell for well over $1 million. Sometimes in the range of $1.5 million. And those tend to skew the results. And so we see that, yes, values are going up, but some of that big jump is really the bigger jump that was taken on the high end. Our property values, though, are definitely still holding and doing very well. And with that, that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you, Donna. A mouthful. Next, we have the Architectural Controls and Standards Committee. Jim?
First, I want to apologize ahead of time. I'll be a little more long-winded today than normal because I'm reporting on actually 2 committee meetings because one was pushed forward because of the Christmas holiday. So first of all, we'll start with the November 28th meeting. And in that meeting, we were advised that we are missing 3 positions in alterations, and yet they're still trying to strive to move things forward as quickly as possible. We had 4 variances at that meeting. We also pushed forward the revision to the architectural standard skylights, which we pushed through and voted on today in the board meeting and approved that. We're continuing to try and improve all the standards to make them more timeless and also more towards materials and stuff that are the modern day materials to move forward with that. Along with that, we also were working on the water heater replacement. And in the water heater replacement, we're in a transition period now. But in that transition period, everybody needs to be aware that if it's an emergent situation, after hours, weekends, or holidays, by state law, you're allowed to go in, get your plumber, replace your water heater. You don't have to be without it. But you do have to do follow-up. And what our new procedure is we have water heater, and it's no longer like for like, it's like for equivalent, because we understand the sizes and the new products and everything are a little bit different than what is standard in the units at this time. When you do this right now, while we're in this transition period, you have to actually go pick up the form from alterations. It's got 1 page on the front, 1 page on the back, and you fill it out, and then you turn it back into alterations. You'll receive an email with the authorization from alterations to go to the city for a permit. You're no longer getting a mutual consent, you're just getting a notice that you can take to the city, so we've cut out a lot of the steps. And then after that, you fill out the form, you receive the email, you go to the city, you follow up with before photos, after photos, what product you were put in, what date it was put in, and that's your follow-up so that we have a record for the association. That's all we want is a record to know when it was replaced, what it was replaced with. What will happen in the future, after this transition period, is the form will actually be online. You can fill the form out online. You'll email that form in, or you'll click a button to send that form in. An automatic reply email will be sent to you, and you can take that to city to get the permit. Much, much more streamlined. And again, you follow the directions on the form that say before and after photos, what kind of product you put in, the gallonage, all the installation process. Once you get it inspected and signed off by the city, that's when you turn all that information back into the alterations department, and it's a done deal. So again, we're trying to streamline all these things. We're trying to make them all more universal. We'll go on to the meeting that we had yesterday on December 19th. We approved one variance. Oh, and on the November 28th meeting, we approved 4 variances. We approved 1 variance in the meeting yesterday. We sent forward to the full board revisions to Architectural Standard 4, air conditioning units and heat pumps. We also sent revised to Architectural Standard washers and dryer installation to the full board, so that'll be coming to the next meeting of this board. And again, one by one, we're working through these standards to make them more up to date, more universal, and timeless. So that concludes my report. Our next meeting of the Architectural Controls and Standards Committee will be January 23rd of 2023. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Next, we'll hear about what's going on within the 3rd Maintenance and Construction Committee. Ralph?
Okay, our last meeting was November 7th, and at that time, staff updated and reviewed several items. Design of the French drain system for Gate 11 is near completion and actually expected by the end of the year. That doesn't leave much more time. But the hopes is that'll get done and start work on that towards the end of the first quarter next year. The staff also reviewed a couple of other items that are of interest because they've saved us money. One is another review of the exterior paint program where we changed from 10 to 15 years, which in effect cuts down the number of buildings that have to be repainted each year. So there's a cost saving there. Also for this year, there was a change in what GRF has done in far as the Shepherd's Crook perimeter fencing, and that allowed us to relax a little bit and saved a few dollars there, doing a little bit less distance. And we've also asked staff to look at other appropriate fencing which could reduce the cost in future years. In some cases, for example, maybe leaving the barbed wire alone in areas that are relatively invisible and kind of out of view. Also reviewed a number of other factors or items that undergo review periodically and revision. We looked into the various programs and schedules, including priorities. Many of these items are dependent on a scheduled R&R, there's revision and replacement and review relative to their anticipated life. Some are scheduled by regular inspection by staff or by history, but all of the schedules require adjustment from time to time depending on an immediate need or unscheduled factors. I would like to emphasize they were greatly dependent upon observation and reporting by members, preferably done with a helpful attitude and with patience. We had several such reports this morning, and we will be looking into those. The next 3rd M&C meeting, scheduled meeting, is for 1:30 p.m. January 9th here in this room. Y'all are welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Ralph. Next, we'll hear about.
I have a-
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. I just wanted to emphasize for any of our new members or residents that when Ralph mentioned we had changed from every 10 years to every 15 years of painting exterior structures, that was because the paint manufacturer is willing to warranty it that long. So we don't want people to think that we're just letting exterior buildings go. That is not the case at all. So should anybody see that paint is peeling or not looking as good on their structures, please let us know. That might mean there's moisture or something else causing that. So I did just want to make sure we've got lots of new people, and maybe some of us didn't remember from hearing it last year.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the update. All right. We'll now move on to the Third Landscape Committee. Tush?
Yes, thank you. I'm filling in for Ira, as he couldn't be here today. Our meeting was on December 1st, 2022. A few items were discussed. One of them is, or a couple of them we already took care of during our meeting. Approval to remove some a ficus tree. Also, we discussed the supplemental appropriation of the $151,000, and everything else was very routine of a report given by the director of the landscape department. And our next meeting is going to be on January 5th, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. in the boardroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Tush. We'll now hear about the Water Conservation Committee. Donna?
Thank you. Very good report this time. I'm excited to be able to give it. First, the savings we're seeing both financially and in water, which is so important, are continuing. Over the past year, we have had over 19% reduction in residential water use over the previous years, and that's very important. It also saves us a great deal of money. It's hard to, we can't really give you the exact numbers it saved, because just when we began the big push to save water, El Toro Water District was forced to raise our rates. So we don't see that savings exactly as we would like to, but I can tell you that in the excessive water use area, which is Tier 4, costs about 4 times as much as the same amount of water in Tier 1, which would be efficient use of water. In that area, we used to run an average of around $15,000 a month just for Tier 4, and that is something that we can see pulled out. And we are now running about $1,500 a month in that area. So that is just huge. And we can tell you that although we can't say exactly how much money was saved because of that change in rates, we did save in residential water over 11 million gallons of water over the year over year. So that's very important. The other thing is the Water Conservation Committee has recently filmed a program for TV6. It will be aired in January every Sunday at 5 p.m. and every Wednesday morning, just in case you haven't had enough, every Wednesday morning at 8:30, so we can get people at both times of the day. And again, that's every Sunday and every Wednesday throughout the month of January. It will also be available on YouTube when you click that upper corner at the website's homepage and you click the YouTube channel. You'll be able to see it there. Our guests on that program were Dennis Cafferty, General Manager of El Toro Water District, who shared some really important information with us. And our other guest was Lee Goldstein, who is our advisor to the Water Committee. He's a resident of Third Mutual. He's also very, very active in conservation efforts throughout the village and was chair of Laguna Woods Earth Day event last year and will be again this year. So we were pleased to have both of those, and we hope you take a peek at it. And our next meeting, we only meet every quarter. That's only 4 times a year. And our next meeting will be January 26th. That's always a Thursday at 2 o'clock in the Elm Room. And we've moved those meetings to the Elm Room because we do have people coming to them. We love having you. And that is a room that is much more conducive to discussions. We have it set up as a U-shaped table so everybody can talk to each other, even if they're visitors rather than members of the committee. So with that concludes the Water Conservation Committee.
Thanks, Donna. Great. And finally, we have the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee. This committee last met on Tuesday, November 22nd, when we discussed several policies, including the nuisance policy that the board voted on earlier in this meeting, as well as the appeals policy, the pet policy, and the common area breezeways and balconies policy. The committee also discussed a member's Bill of Rights policy proposed by Director Zallen. And this committee will next meet on 1 week from today, Tuesday, December 27th at 9:30 a.m. here in the boardroom. And we plan to continue our discussion on the appeals, pet, and common area breezeway and balconies policies as we look to make them more clear and relevant. All right, and that's all that we have for the third mutual committees. We'll now move on to agenda item 14, where we'll share our monthly GRF committee status updates, starting with the GRF Community Activities Committees. And this committee, which is often referred to as CAC, last met on Thursday, December 8th, where we discussed and approved a request by the Rock and Rollers Club to extend the clubhouse holiday hours on Veterans Day of next year. That's November 2023. The approval was based upon the Rock and Rollers Club agreement to pay for the staff time required to support having that clubhouse stay open later than normal hours. This committee also discussed at length whether or not to pass on to members and residents the credit card and transaction fees for events managed via the ActiveNet program, which is the tool that is used to manage tickets for events and things within the village. Currently, if a member or resident purchases their tickets online, they pay the transaction and credit card fees. However, if they walk into the recreation department and buy a ticket through the recreation, GRF has been paying those fees, and GRF is us. And over the past 3 years, those fees have been averaging about $18,000 that GRF has been paying. And so the committee, after talking at length, approved recommending that these fees be passed on to the members and residents as part of their purchasing of the tickets. And that recommendation will go forward to the GRF Finance Committee, which meets tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. And if it gets endorsed by the GRF Finance Committee, it'll then go to the GRF Board for consideration. So the CAC Committee will next meet on Thursday, January 12th at 1:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. And next we have the GRF Media and Communications Committee. Jim?
We met on November 21st, 2022. Some of the things that you're going to see coming are a change in the internet. We're going to be getting faster speeds. There are going to be some minor increases in cost, but the increases in speed are dramatically higher than the increases in cost. We had our meeting on the 17th was canceled, so we have no information from that. But that's about it for media and communications. The new contract with the internet provider is coming up soon, and then all the different fees and everything will be published.
Okay, great, thanks. How about the GRF Disaster Preparedness Task
And now
Force?
disaster and preparedness met on November 29th. We have a process that we're going through and trying to work at developing our disaster preparedness action overview. And basically, the disaster preparedness task force now needs to review its current plans with VMS. We have to look at expectations from residents and volunteers. We need training of residents, volunteers, and VMS staff, and external relationships with the City of Laguna Woods, the county, neighboring cities, forgotten business community that oftentimes are overlooked when we're looking at disasters. Exercises in these critical areas should be done not only by meetings and that, but also by actual events set up to prepare for the disasters. The other segment of this is developing a culture of preparedness. In that, we need to be self-preparedness as much as possible for each individual. Clubs need to give presentations We need to do it by television, print media, talks and displays, and again, events where people participate in disaster. Volunteers need to be taught how to work with residents that may have limitations, and those residents may be the ones best suited by utilizing the clubhouse resource and staff. Our community is so large that really the need to shelter in place for most of the community needs to be what's adapted. And along with that, you need to be prepared. You need to have certain supplies. There should be people that are volunteers that are giving you lists of what you need. The disaster preparedness is downstairs here in the community center. You can go in there and get information, and they'll tell you the kind of things you need to be prepared to shelter in place. They also have items for sale that can help you accomplish that, but you can buy a lot of these things out just in the regular general community rather than having to get a specific emergency pack. But sometimes it's much more efficient to get one of the emergency packs. So they're for sale down in the disaster preparedness office. Our next meeting is January 31st, 9:30 a.m. in the boardroom.
Okay, thanks, Jim. What's happening in the GRF Maintenance and Construction Committee, Ralph?
Well, the last regular meeting of the GRF M&C committee was held last Wednesday, December 14, and there were a couple of other special meetings during November and December. I'll just touch on about three of the items that I think are of major interest that occurred. The decision on Building E replacement has been temporarily postponed once again, pending a formal space planning study by an outside firm. The RFP for that study, I believe, has been already approved. A decision was made in committee the 12th, I believe, of December, to abandon the current SCE proposal for EV charging at stations at 3 of the clubhouses. I think it was 3, 4, and 5, as I recall. It apparently just hasn't worked out economically and to be satisfactory. So the study and search for new EV charging opportunities will continue. Finally, the beautification program at Clubhouse 1 is progressing. The initial proposal's gone through review by the committee, and suggestions have been incorporated in the design, and that program is the design program is progressing well, nearly completed. The next regular meeting of GRF M&C committee is scheduled for Wednesday, February 8th at 9:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Any updates from the GRF Landscape Committee? Push?
Actually, I don't have much to tell you except that the dates are February 8th is the next GRF Landscape Committee meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. How about the GRF Mobility and Vehicles Committee?
Oh, yes. We did meet on December 7th, 2023. It was in this boardroom. It was a very short meeting with information from the department head, giving us details about the statistics about the way the different bus routes are running, and that was about it. And the purchases, the cars or the vehicles that we have ordered are coming in slowly, and that's about it.
Yeah.
It was a really short meeting. Our next meeting is February 1st, 2023 at 1:30 p.m.
Okay. Thanks, Kush.
Thank you.
We'll now have an update regarding Laguna Woods Village traffic hearings. Jules?
Business was very slow these days in traffic court. I suppose that's a good thing. It means the residents are driving more carefully and more slowly and in a safe way. or security is slacking off, but I believe the former, is the explanation. Traffic court convened on November 16th. We heard only 2 contested cases. One was for double parking, which could easily have been not double parking, but parking in the middle of the road. We found her guilty. And another woman was ticketed for parking directly on the sidewalk, believe it or not, and she actually defended her parking skills. The next meeting is scheduled for, well, actually, should we even identify when the next meeting is scheduled, because it's a confidential meeting? But if anybody's interested, they can ask me after the meeting, and that concludes my remarks.
Okay. Thank you, Jules. And next we have the Information Technology Advisory Committee. This committee, known as ITAC, currently meets monthly and last met on Friday, December 9th. This committee is currently overseeing the efforts to replace most of our old multitude of old tools, processes, and systems with a single automated tool that will be used by staff, members, and residents to support the day-to-day operations of the village. This effort is currently in development phase. The development team, which consists of consultants and VMS staff, are currently holding iterative sessions called conference room pilots, where staff reviews the functionality of the new automated tool to confirm that it meets their requirements. And when they see some issues where it's not meeting their requirements, the consultants make an adjustment, and then staff tries it again. And that's kind of the iterative nature of it. So they're kind of testing it, trying it out. We've loaded real village data into the tool so that they can see exactly what might happen in real life situations. So this is a process that will take several more months to complete, since there's a lot of functionality being delivered in this first phase, which is mainly all of the financials of our village. So going well, a little bit behind, but going well. The ITAC will next meet sometime in January. The date hasn't been quite finalized. And finally, the following GRF committees have not met since this third board last met on November 15th, so there are no updates for these. The GRF Security and Community Access Committee last met on October 31st and is scheduled to next meet on February 27th at 1:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. The GRF Finance Committee last met on October 19th and is scheduled to meet tomorrow, December 21st at 1:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. The GRF Purchasing Ad Hoc Committee last met on April 7th. And there is no next scheduled date, so its next meeting is to be determined. The GRF Clubhouse Facilities Renovation Ad Hoc Committee last met on June 24th, and the next meeting is also to be determined. The GRF Insurance Ad Hoc Committee last met on July 25th, and the next meeting is also to be determined. The GRF Website Ad Hoc Committee last met on August 10th, and the next meeting is scheduled for next week, December 29th. And finally, the GRF Strategic Planning Committee last met on October 3rd, and the next meeting is to be determined. So here's some examples of a bunch of meetings that have no date, so I'll continue to work with the GRF board to see if we can eliminate some of these committees. It helps save time and effort. So that concludes our committee reports. We're now at agenda item 15, which is for the board to note any items that they'd like to discuss at a future board meeting. So far on the list, we have the new business items that we discussed earlier today and agreed to put on 28-day review. And those are approved the revised architectural standard number 26 for skylight installations and the approval of updates to the third nuisance policy. Are there any other items that any board member would like to add to a future agenda item to be discussed at a future time? All right. And that's fine. Seeing none, that's okay. We'll move on to agenda item 16, director's comments. So this is where the directors can state any last comments that they'd like to share. So Jules, we'll start with you, if that works.
I'd just like to explain why I'm opposed to the new board rules. The disciplinary rules are completely unintelligible. They're inherently inconsistent. They're internally contradictory, and they're a clear violation of the members' constitutional rights to due process and fair dealing. It also violates what is known as the covenant of good faith and fair dealing that is implied by the courts in every single contract entered into, every contract. So it suggests that whoever is the author of this peculiar language maybe should be reassigned to ensure that they're better qualified at, because this does not, it is completely, inherently inconsistent, and it really should be rewritten.
Okay, thank you. Moon, you have any comments you'd like to share today? Do you have any comments you'd find? No? Okay. Ralph?
Just a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everyone.
Okay, thanks. Ralph? Jim?
No comment.
Okay. Chris?
No comment.
Donna?
No comment except to reaffirm those wishes for a happy holiday and a happy and healthy New Year for everybody.
And Kush, welcome back. Any final comments?
Thank you. It's same thing. Happy holidays to the staff and to my fellow board members and to the residents for whom we are here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. And thanks, everybody, for attending. That's our meeting today. Business for our open meeting has now been completed, and at this time, the monthly board meeting will recess for 45 minutes and reconvene to executive session. So thanks to those of you who participated, and thanks, as always, to everyone for listening. We are done.